All right, so today we're diving into a story that's unfolding right now, a story about medicine and access and big questions about, well, fairness, really.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case. Really gets to the heart of some big issues in healthcare, especially when it comes to rare diseases.
Right, and the stakes are incredibly high, especially when you consider what's at stake for the families involved.
Absolutely. We're talking about life and death situations, about people's ability to access treatments that could dramatically improve their lives, even save their lives.
So to set the scene, imagine this. A child in India is born with a really rare genetic disease.
And then a company, one of those big pharmaceutical companies, develops a treatment, something that could really make a difference, a real breakthrough.
But here's the catch, and it's a heartbreaking one. The treatment is so expensive, so astronomically expensive, that it's basically out of reach for most families.
And that's the reality for a lot of people dealing with rare diseases. The treatments exist, but the cost can be an insurmountable barrier.
This isn't just a hypothetical scenario either. This is happening right now in India with a disease called spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA.
It affects roughly 1 in every 7,700 births in India, which means there are thousands of individuals and families grappling with this.
To put a number on it, it's estimated that around 4,000 people in India are currently battling SMA.
So before we go any further, let's break down what SMA actually is, just so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, good point. It can be a bit confusing.
Basically, it all comes down to a protein called SMN, which is essential for a whole range of really basic functions in the body. I mean, we're talking about things like moving your arms and legs, swallowing, even breathing.
Yeah, stuff we usually don't even think about.
Right, exactly. So in SMA, there's a deficiency in this SMN protein, and without enough of it, those basic functions are severely compromised.
And tragically, it's the leading genetic cause of infant deaths in India, which is just devastating.
It's a really serious condition. And here's another thing that's kind of scary. About 1 in 38 people in India unknowingly carry the gene responsible for SMA. So even if you don't have SMA, there's a chance you could be a carrier.
That's a lot of people.
It really is. But amidst all of this, there was a glimmer of hope back in 2021. A new drug called Risdiplam, marketed as Evrysdi by Roche, was approved.
So this was a potential game changer.
It was a big step forward, definitely. Now, it's important to understand that this drug isn't a cure for SMA. It doesn't eliminate the underlying genetic issue.
Right.
But what it does is it helps people with SMA produce more of that vital SMN protein.
So basically, it helps them manage the condition better, lead a better life.
Exactly, that's the idea. And it has shown some really promising results in terms of improving motor function and overall quality of life for SMA patients.
So a ray of hope.
Fine.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There is. And in this case, the but is a big one, affordability. The
Yeah.
cost of this treatment is just massive.
How massive are we talking?
A year's supply of Evrysdi can range anywhere from 20 lakhs to 70 lakhs rupees.
Wow, that's a huge amount of money.
It is, especially for families in India where many struggle to make ends meet as it is.
And to make matters worse, this isn't a one-time cost.
No, not at all. Each bottle of Evrysdi costs around 2 lakhs rupees, and patients typically need at least 30 bottles a year.
30 bottles.
Yeah, so you can see how those costs quickly add up to an impossible amount for most families.
That's just completely out of reach.
It really is. And that's where the story starts to get even more interesting, because an Indian pharmaceutical company, Natco Pharma, steps into the picture. They see this huge unmet need, all these people who could benefit from Evrysdi but can't afford it.
And they decide to do something about it.
They do. Natco's plan is to manufacture Risdiplam, the same drug in India, but at a much lower cost.
So making it accessible to those who desperately need it.
That's the goal. They recognize the ethical imperative here, that life-saving treatments shouldn't be priced out of reach for those who need them most.
It makes sense. But I'm guessing Roche, the company that originally developed Evrysdi, wasn't too thrilled about this.
You're right. Ross holds a patent on Risdiplam, which gives them the exclusive right to produce and sell the drug until May 2035. It's a standard practice in the pharmaceutical industry. It allows them to recoup their investment in research and development and incentivizes innovation.
But then Natco comes along and says, hey, we're going to make this drug too, and sell it at a fraction of the price.
Exactly. So Roche sees this as a direct threat to their patent and their profits.
So what do?
They take legal action. Roche sues Natco for patent infringement, and seeks an injunction to prevent Natco from launching their version of the drug.
Injunction.
Basically, it's a legal order from a court to stop someone from doing something.
So Roche is trying to get the court to issue a stop order against Natco.
Right, to prevent them from selling their lower-priced version of Risdiplam. And this is where the case gets really fascinating.
What happened?
The Delhi High Court refused to grant Roche the injunction.
So they basically said, no, Natco can go ahead and produce the drug.
In essence, yes. And the court's reasoning for this decision was really interesting.
What was it?
They basically said that while Roche has a valid patent, the fact is Evrysdi is not available at a reasonably affordable price in India.
So the court is acknowledging the reality of the situation, that people are suffering and dying because they can't access this life-saving medication?
Exactly. They're weighing the interests of Roche, who have invested in developing the drug, against the interests of the public, who need access to it.
And in this case, they sided with the public.
They did. The court argued that if Natco could manufacture the drug and make it available at a price that people could actually afford, then the public interest had to take precedence over Roche's patent rights, at least in this specific instance.
That's a huge win for access to medicine in India.
It's a landmark decision, no doubt. But it also raises some big questions about the pharmaceutical industry, about patents, about profits.
Right, like, is it fair to companies like Roche? I mean, they poured tons of money and resources into developing this drug. Shouldn't they be able to reap the rewards?
It's a valid point. Pharmaceutical research and development is incredibly expensive and risky. It takes years, sometimes decades, to bring a new drug to market, and there's no guarantee of success.
It's not like developing a new app.
Not at all. And patents are meant to protect those investments, give companies a period of exclusivity where they can sell the drug without competition and hopefully recoup their costs and make a profit.
But there's also the issue of market size, right? Especially with rare diseases like SMA.
Right. The patient population is relatively small compared to more common conditions, so companies might try to maximize their profits during the patent period before generic competition drives down prices.
And they're trying to make as much money as they can while they can.
It's a business at the end of the day. But that brings us back to the core ethical question. Is it okay to charge exorbitant prices for life-saving drugs, even if it means people can't afford them?
Especially when those drugs are needed for rare diseases.
Exactly. And that's where the specifics of the Risdiplam case get really interesting. Because some reports suggest that the actual cost of producing a bottle of Evrysdi, including ingredients, packaging, and a reasonable profit margin, could be as low as 3,000 rupees.
3,000, that's a tiny fraction of the 2 lakhs they're charging.
It is. Even if Roche were to apply 1,000% profit margin, they could still sell the drug in India at a 99% discount compared to the U.S. price, which is over $11,000 per bottle.
So it seems like there's a lot of wiggle room there.
There is. And that raises questions about whether these prices are truly justified or whether they're more about maximizing profits at the expense of people's health.
It's a tough one. And this whole situation also highlights the complex history of India's patent laws.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating story, really. You see, before 1970, India only granted patents on the process of manufacturing a drug, not on the drug itself.
So you could come up with a new drug, but someone else could figure out a different way to make it and sell it without infringing on your patent.
That's the gist of it. And that approach had a huge impact. It allowed Indian pharmaceutical companies to flourish, producing and selling affordable generic versions of many essential medicines.
And that's how India became known as the pharmacy of the world, right?
Exactly. But then things changed. In 1995, India joined the World Trade Organization and signed the TRIPS agreement.
TRIPS, that stands for?
Trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. It's a global agreement that sets minimum standards for intellectual property protection, including patents. And one of the key changes TRIPS brought about was that countries had to start granting patents on the drug itself, not just the process.
So Indian companies couldn't just reverse engineer a drug anymore. They had to respect the patent.
Right. And that led to a major shift in India's patent laws in 2005, bringing them in line with global standards.
But here's the thing. TRIPS also included some important flexibilities, right? Safeguards designed to protect public health in situations like this.
Yes, exactly. The agreement recognized that intellectual property rights are important, but access to essential medicines is also crucial.
So what are these flexibilities?
Well, one of the most important ones is compulsory licensing.
Which basically means
It means that a government can authorize a company to produce a generic version of a patented drug, even without the patent holder's consent.
that's a pretty big deal.
It is. And there are specific conditions that need to be met for a compulsory license to be granted, like when the patented drug is too expensive or there's a shortage.
This is not just a free-for-all.
No, not at all. It's a
Yeah.
carefully considered measure. And there have been cases in India where compulsory licenses have been granted, like the 2013 case involving Natco Pharma and Bayer Corporation.
What happened there?
Natco was granted a compulsory license to produce a more affordable version of Bayer's cancer drug, Nexavar. It was a landmark decision.
So there's precedent for this kind of thing in India.
Absolutely. And another important TRIPS flexibility is the prevention of patent evergreening.
Evergreening. That sounds sneaky.
Yeah, it's basically when companies try to extend the life of their patents by making minor or insignificant changes to an existing drug.
Just to get a fresh 20-year patent.
Exactly. And TRIPS tries to prevent that by saying that any changes to a drug have to be genuinely significant. They have to actually improve the drug's effectiveness.
So no more tweaking a molecule slightly just to game the system.
Right. And a major case highlighting this was the 2013 Novartis case in India.
What happened there?
Novartis tried to extend their patent on Gleevec, a very important anti-cancer drug, but the court rejected their application because they couldn't prove that the changes they made actually made the drug better for patients.
So another win for access to medicine.
It was. And then there's the third key flexibility, parallel imports.
What are those?
It's basically the ability to import a cheaper version of a patented drug from another country without needing the patent holder's permission.
So if a drug costs way less in, say, Brazil, you can import it to India.
Exactly. It's another way to increase access to affordable medicines.
So with all these flexibilities in mind, it seems like the Delhi High Court was well within its rights to deny Roche's injunction.
Absolutely. The court specifically cited Evrysdi's high cost and raised concerns about potential patent evergreening.
Because, as we mentioned earlier, Roche's patent filings in other countries suggested that risdiplam might have been part of an earlier patent that would have expired sooner in India.
Exactly. And that led the court to believe that Roche might have been trying to extend their monopoly on the drug artificially.
So it wasn't just about Roche's patent rights. It was about fairness.
Yeah.
About preventing what the court saw as potentially exploitative practices.
Right. The court was also upholding the spirit of India's Patents Act of 2005, which gives the government the power to allow generic production of a drug in the public interest.
So this wasn't an anti-patent decision. It was about balancing the interests of patent holders with the needs of the public, especially when it comes to life-saving medicines.
Exactly. And it sends a clear message that Indian courts are willing to prioritize access to affordable medicines, even if it means challenging the might of big pharmaceutical companies.
But of course, the pharmaceutical industry has its own perspective on all of this.
They do. And many global pharmaceutical companies have expressed concerns about India's patent laws, arguing that they create uncertainty and discourage investment in research and development.
Their argument being that if they can't be sure they'll be able to profit from their inventions, they'll take their research elsewhere.
To countries where they feel their intellectual property rights are more secure.
So it's a complex issue with a lot of different perspectives.
It really is, and it raises fundamental questions about the role of pharmaceutical companies in society. Are they primarily driven by a mission to improve global health or by a desire to maximize profits?
It's a question worth pondering. And as for the Roche versus Natco case, the saga isn't over yet, is it?
Not quite. Roche still has the option to appeal the Delhi High Court's decision. And if they win, they could potentially claim damages from Natco for any sales they made during this period.
So Natco's plans to launch their affordable version of risdiplam are on hold for now.
They are. This case is a microcosm of a much larger debate about access to medicine, intellectual property rights, and the balance between profits and public health. It's a debate that's likely to continue for many years to come.
And it's a debate with real-world consequences for millions of people around the world. It makes you think, if access to life-saving medicine comes down to legal battles and financial negotiations, are we really prioritizing human life? It's a question worth asking ourselves, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it's a question that deserves a deeper discussion.
Absolutely. And one that we'll continue to explore in future deep dives.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.